Pledge allegiance to the flag
to the flag of the United
America,
States of America,
to the republic for which it stands,
which stands
one
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
justice for all.
Justice for all.
Okay, a couple housekeeping, and then we'll get to our agenda. First, hopefully folks had a chance to review the minutes from our April meeting. Did anybody have any questions or concerns with the minutes? All right, would someone like to make a motion for their approval?
So moved.
And
Second.
I heard, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? All right, the motion passes 5-0 to approve our minutes from the April meeting. Tammy, if it's okay with you, can we pass over for now the project facilities updates, unless you think that will facilitate the first two topics we're going to hit tonight?
No, that's fine. We can pass over that.
Okay, and we'll come back to that. We do not have any Board of Commissioners members or Shade Tree here tonight, or school board. So the usual reports, we'll pass over those, maybe double back with some information on those that I may have some knowledge about, but for now we'll pass those. I'd like to start with one old business item, that is the Radnor mountain bike team. And Susie Bruns was asked to join us this evening, I believe by Tammy, to give us an update with respect to the specifics of her group's current status and needs, and perhaps maybe some general ideas, concepts, or thoughts on this issue, which has been before us. I know Commissioner Abel asked us to kick it around again as well. So Susie, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours to bring us up to speed with where your folks are with the mountain biking group.
All right, so I don't have a formal presentation. I think the communication I'd had from Tammy was more, if there's questions that you all have that then I can be answering, but I can give you an update of where we are. So since we met in March 2019, we were a team that consisted of only Radnor individuals. And then because of the limitations that we were having in a practice location, we began exploring other options in Delaware County and welcomed, participants from other school districts. The first year, we had one individual from Ridley School District, and then 8 students from Radnor. And the coaches were split about 50-50 Radnor coaches to other individuals from Delaware County. And I think we had like 12 coaches and 9 kids on the team that year. And then last year we had 40 participants, student athletes, and 30 coaches. And 13 of those were Radnor. The next highest school district was Wallingford, Swarthmore, or Strathaven, and then Haverford. And then we had some single individuals at a couple other school districts or parochial or private schools, all in Delaware County. Our team is now open to 12 of the 15 county school districts. We are inclusive of for the districts that lie completely in Delaware County. 2 school districts border Chester County. And so we include students from every school, or students who live in every school district except for Garnet Valley, Chichester, and Chester Upland are welcome to join the team. And we exclude them simply because of geography of getting to our 2 main practice locations, which are Haverford Reserve and Smedley Park, which is a Delaware County park. As far as registrations this year, we have about the same 30 coaches, a couple more than that, actually. I think we've only lost 2 coaches, but we've had quite a few more, 5 or 6 more join us. And we're currently running at about 43 fully registered participants, and we will be capping at 65 total, simply because while we have the coaching support for it, we don't feel that we can accommodate more than that where we currently are. We rarely see 100% participation at our practices, as everything is participation by choice. So they aren't required to come to practice. They're not required to compete in races. They are welcome to participate in any part of the program that they feel they're capable of doing or have an interest in. As far as what does our program entail, there are 5 events that our state league puts on. One of those is Fair Hill, Maryland. That is the closest facility that they use for one of the state events. Then Gettysburg, Johnstown, Pittsburgh, and Raystown Lake. And all of those facilities have a vast mountain bike trail or single track trail network that permits riding of an assortment of levels and abilities. And there's many trails that we're able to use for the league needs. Those race weekends are not only a race, we also have what we call an adventure component, so that the children who do not wish to compete can still participate on those trails and be engaged in activities, but they don't have that competitive pressure that some of the kids really feel in that middle school, high school range. We find that most students do end up competing in some way. However, there are certainly some that don't ever want to take that step to competition. And that's one of the things we're most proud of with the program, is that they don't have to. They can still come and participate and be fully engaged, and they are, you know, a full member of the team despite not competing. The program also has what we call Teen Trail Corps, which is our trail component. And students not only do trail work, so there's sort of a saying among mountain bikers, you ride, you rake. And generally the mountain bike community is recognized for doing trail work in the networks where they do ride. So the kids who participate in that trail work actually earn points as if they were competing. So that, right, they might not ever want to compete, but they love doing trail work in addition to riding the trails. So they are able to contribute points to our team and our team ranking across the state, just as other competitive students would. There's also what we call the Teen Trail Corps Captains ranking, and they earn badges. So based on different activities that they do about trail advocacy, not just mountain bike trails, but just trails in general. You know, working with kids today on the platform they're at, that might be a social media post, that might be, you know, making a presentation to the team about trails in the area, but they can earn those badges and work toward that captain status. So it's kind of equated to Boy Scouts, that you're earning merit ranking along the way. So what do we need, or what do we kind of have at our facilities, or that we're able to access right now? Smedley is primarily an intermediate advanced trail network. Very, very few beginner trails. And the trails that we have at Smedley that are considered beginner, you know, it's a short out and back. It's not circuitous, that it's easy for us to then, you know, keep the kids going on a path. You ride out, you all have to stop, let the last one come and return. So it's not a circle path that would be make practice much more conducive. We also are limited with fields with hills at Smedley. And the importance of that is we do a lot of skill work with the children, not just the beginner kids, but advanced. The same way that you see other sports continue to practice their foundational skills, we do that in mountain biking as well. And so whether it's neutral and ready position, if it's braking, if it's learning how to change your gears, those are the skills we start with them. And then we continue to build upon those and practice those throughout the season. Hills are important for that because, of course, you're climbing. That's generally, Even some of the flattest areas, there's still often a hill that you need to learn how to change your gear for, or how to climb properly in your positioning on your bike. So that's why grassy hills are important for us. While we experience those things on the trails, it's hard for us to observe as coaches from the trail. So a grassy area provides that for us. Haverford Reserve has a great trail system, but again, the field access is extremely limited. So when we look at where are we today, we provide beginner opportunities for the youth. However, it's really our intermediate and our advanced riders that have trails that they can hit from day one and just go. Our beginner athletes, it takes us a little bit longer to get them going. We use our Saturday practice as opportunities for those beginners. And what that means is we go to a trail network like Knox-Mixon, like White Clay, that have flowy trails. And that's, you know, the term that we use is flowy, that are easy, that are not super technical. And you can think of that as the same as when you're hiking. What's hard to hike is often hard to bike. So our beginner athletes were looking for those simple single track trails to give them longer riding opportunities. And that was really what we had been looking at when we looked at Odorrezio, that opportunity to put in a simple single track trail that had a bit of a hill, but certainly is not a mountain. And what we've also always liked about it is it's so accessible to the town of Wayne, so that we have young children who are, out riding their bikes, and this would give them an opportunity to ride from pavement to off-road, come, after school from their homes, the same way that, we see other kids just playing at the park, gives them an opportunity to ride their bikes. So that's kind of where we are. I wouldn't say that I reread my whole proposal, the proposal that the kids put together, the proposal that I worked with them on. And I wouldn't say a whole lot's changed in 2 years, except for the fact that we're larger, there's more students, which of course is always a goal, to grow programs, and that we are now more inclusive of all of Delaware County, not just Radnor Township. So that's where we are.
Great. Thank you very much, Susie. I'll make some comments and perhaps have some questions, but tend to butt in and take control of the discussion too often. So I'll open up. Does anybody on our board have any questions for Susie or comments regarding her presentation that she just gave, or the whole topic of mountain biking in our parks?
Yeah, I do. Susie, having been back in Odorrezio quite a few times since you first came to the board, I've been looking at it from, I also would love to see a nature trail back there, but where exactly you think would be optimal for your group, or especially that beginner group. And what I wondered is it big enough for your needs? You know better than I do what you need for the mountain biking. What this board might bring is, well, we also know what we have to deal with. We have to deal with neighbors and how close we are to houses and that kind of thing. So between the two of us, or among all of us, we should be able to, bring enough to the table that we figure out what's doable, what's needed, what's possible. So I'd like to, you probably went through this 2 years ago, but if you could go through again, why you think, what areas of Odorrezio you would be interested in, and why you think that would be optimal for your needs, and have you factored in proximity to the neighbors who are on, mostly like on two sides, I guess, sort of the Highland Avenue type neighbors, and then there are some on, I don't know, is that whatever road that is over there on the way to the elementary school, and then Atlee.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you know what I'm talking about.
Right. Well, so there's definitely plenty of space in that wooded acreage. Our comparison would be the Cedar Hollow Park in Tredyffrin, which is actually off of the Chester Valley Trail. And it's a similar park, and it's about 20 acres in total. About half of it is used for fields, and the other half is wooded. And they have added single track trail to that park. The mileage has been increasing over the years, but it started as a 1 to 2 mile. And that's where you don't really know until you get in there and you really see what you're dealing with. We are aware there's a little bit of a wetland area, but is it true wetlands, or is it, just wet area, right? Is it true wetlands, or is it a wet area there in Odorrezio? And until I would get in there and really dig and we really see what that drainage is like, we wouldn't necessarily know, unless there is record of that has been done from the environmental side of things. As far as setback goes, again, I think that's what we could work with. However, just as there's setbacks based on residential areas, I'm sure that we could do the same, in that keeping a buffer to whatever the property line is, whatever's property line that is, whether we align it to the same residential zoning that's out there, or if there's a different standard that's used for recreational usage. But right, that would be taken into consideration, which again could then limit the total mileage of trails that could be done. But I'm fairly confident you could still get a nice 1.5-ish trail, simple single track trail.
It's not too steep back there. I'm trying to get a sense. It's not, I mean, I know there's a slope pretty much, but.
Right, I mean, if we're talking about the ravine, right, no, we're not going to be riding on the ravine.
No, I'm
right?
not talking about that.
But back in, there's a slope, but no, it's not too steep at all.
It's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Susie, first of all, congratulations on the growth of the team. You and the other folks responsible for, supporting it and encouraging the kids, et cetera. I'm amazed at how much it's grown. And for these kids to have an opportunity to do something different in a traditional football, baseball, basketball, lacrosse kind of thing, number one, and number two, learn about nature and being stewards at a young age. I think it's awesome, and I love the idea. I did love it before, of trying to put a beginner trail at Odorrezio. I think a couple things that we talked about back then still probably remain, and that is the concerns of neighbors to that park, number one, and number two, ensuring that the kids, at least the kids on the team, and then are involved with your group, learn that there's going to be, hopefully just one access point that doesn't take kids riding bikes across fields and basketball courts, or from the parking lot in. They come in maybe from whatever side that is decided, et cetera. I think I'd really encourage you guys, and I don't know if you had any time to talk to neighbors or have the kids go around and knock on doors and explain what they're doing to the neighbors, et cetera, try and get their support. I think that'd be a big piece of getting your objective furthered, is to address those couple things. And Howard may be able to jump in, with other concerns that folks might have over there. But I love the idea, and I would be very supportive of it if you were able to accomplish those couple of things to help us, show how thoughtful the proposal would be.
So we had gone around, and the kids had gone around, and we had dropped flyers to homes that didn't respond, or that didn't answer their doors. There was, on the door-to-door, there was one individual who expressed a few concerns, and that was off of the Maplewood side of things. And then when we attended the meeting, there were a lot of others that showed up. And those doors hadn't been answered, so certainly there wasn't a dialogue that was had at that time.
Right.
I think this becomes a question of, we just went through work over there at Philippone, near in my neighborhood, directly where I live. And, I think that's where, if there's a neighborhood meeting, that gives an opportunity for questions and answers to be handled, the kids would welcome that. Of course, at the same time, it's ultimately decisions are made really at your level or at the township level, because there's always feedback, right? We always hear from both sides, but ultimately decisions have to be made one way or the other. So,
Right.
I don't know exactly what that process is.
You said there was a meeting? I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of.
We did not have a meeting for Odoricio. I just,
Okay.
from other projects that happen, other
Right.
opportunities that come up, we could do the same for this if that needs to take place.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. And let's face it, this is Radnor. You're never going to please all the people. You're going to always have, the handful of people that are going to be very vocal about their opposition to it. But if it's done in a thoughtful process, and you can get support of a broad range of the constituents, then I think that's the best chance. And again, this body isn't really any kind of a decision-making body. All we can do is recommend up the level a little bit. But like I said, I love the idea. I just think there's some steps that probably would have to be taken to enhance your ability to have a positive response on that.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. You keep using the term single trail. What's
Single track?
Single track,
Certainly.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Could you give me a little bit of what that is?
Certainly. So single track is essentially a single, approximately 3 foot wide trail. So there's single track where you could put, a one-wheeled bike through. Double track would be, 2 bikes able to ride side by side. And even most pedestrian trails may start as a single track, but they eventually widen beyond just a single bike wheel path. But a true single track is considered to be a single bike. So, if you keep walking on the same path of grass over time, you can think of it, but you could think of it as how wide that path would be,
Right.
And then if people are walking side by side, then it becomes twice as wide.
Right.
But we're not talking a 10-foot wide, and certainly not, as minimal width as we could sustain over time would be ideal, right?
Okay.
You never, right? So, but many hiking paths become much more than a single track trail. Yes.
Okay. In my crazy mind, I'm thinking it's a one-way track, just coming one way and not a double-way thing. And then the other thing is,
well, at any given time, probably that's true, Howard.
See?
Right.
Okay, so I wasn't crazy.
No, you're not. But right, that's the term that's used as single track. And then when you pass people, you figure that out, right?
Okay, all right. And the other thing I would, I think as Chris was leading up to, we're having that meeting on the 27th. And I would welcome you to come, and it's just a kickoff meeting of what they're going to begin to start to inquire about Artivicio Park as far as renovations and moving the court as well. And Tammy can help me out there. I'm just gathering the people and trying to get things started, the ball rolling. And I think this would be a good idea to jump in on the ground floor of this whole thing. And then that way it could be married into everything else that we want to do with Artivicio Park at the same time. So
we would welcome that. And it does make sense to me if it's already happening to tie us into it. If that's,
yes,
what's being
definitely
asked, we would definitely make ourselves available to be there.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's great. Susie, thanks again for being here. I would say that I echo a lot of what Chris has said here tonight. I know I was very impressed with the presentation, and from your son, especially Parker. It's really a positive group. And one of the things that we're looking at in a larger sense is to the feasibility and potential to incorporate some type of activity with mountain biking or trails into our system. And Commissioner Abel asked us to take a look at this. And from what you've described to us tonight, it's very helpful in that this is a growing, as we all thought a couple of years ago this was going to grow, and it's good to see that this is a growing activity. And the folks that were here have stayed with it, and they've recruited others as well. I think it's a time to look at that again. I know we looked at it a couple of years ago, and I think there was some initial resistance, and whether that withered on the vine or COVID got in the way, but I would certainly be willing to have this board take a look at this again. I agree with Howard that some community, and Chris, some community outreach, or at least coordination and discussion is in order. Just to refresh my memory, or at least make sure my memory is accurate, this is only, the usage for Odorrisa would only be for practices and not any type of meets. Is that fair?
Correct. It would never be big enough for me.
I figured as much. And in terms of the one concern I guess I could envision folks having is that the numbers of the group as a whole have increased. In terms of it, hypothetically, this was able to be put through and there'll be practices there. What type of numbers are envisioned to be using the trail at a given time?
Well, so that would be the beauty of Odorrisa, in that it's close to the Radnor Trail. And so if ideally we divide by groups, so we can never have more than 8 athletes and 2 coaches riding in a group at any time. So depending upon which groups we would be putting on, like the beginner trail, if other groups, could ride on the Radnor Trail, spaced, never so many at one time, that it's 60 kids riding in a pack, of course. But those are the ways that we stage our practices anywhere, right? We never go into Haverford and have all 40 kids in one pack riding at the same time. Ability, of course, prevents a lot of that, right? Like your slower kids aren't going to be able to keep up with your faster kids, and skills impact that. So, I think the most we ever had at a single practice last year was 35. When we expand to 65, of course, we have no idea of really knowing how many are ever going to show up. But when we say that we have a team of 65, we don't expect that we would have 65 on a single night. And we would certainly never put 65, release at the same time. That's the beauty of Odorrisa, if it's able to be used with some of the grass area. So the side hills, not the baseball fields, not the soccer fields, but the side hill, and as well as that clearing that was made like straight through the wooded area. There's also gives us an opportunity to do some group skill work throughout while others are riding on a trail system, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the nice things about having a space like Odorrisa. It's accessibility to other things, but also the diversity of what we would have there. And as I said, we do that at the other parks. Haverford Reserve is a little bit more limited with that field opportunity, though.
I'm curious, which trail at Haverford Reserve do you use? The one that's
We use
closer
them
to
all.
the Blue Road, or the one that's farther over by the dog park? All of it?
We use all of them.
Wow.
Yeah. The kids, some of them actually even ride all the way up to 8th and Valley.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yep, absolutely. And in terms of
road crossing is my nightmare. Like
Yeah,
that's
we all have that nightmare.
yes,
but yes, so
and in terms
go ahead, Bill.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over folks. In terms of permitting or working with the townships in which Smedley, which I'm not sure if that's Springfield or Swarthmore or Wallingford, and Haverford, is there any type of coordination that has to be done with those townships? Hours of operation, how do they handle your group?
So I apply for permit through Haverford Reserve, and they have a whole separate field request. The trails at Haverford Reserve may start to get a little trickier as they've put in a Frisbee golf course this year. So we haven't necessarily had to reserve trail time at Haverford Reserve. We do make certain that we are not in the meadow area at the same time as scout groups. So we coordinate with their outdoor recreation coordinator. Last year, it wasn't as well coordinated, but that's something that we've talked about. We need to have a little more coordination for that. If there would be Frisbee golf tournaments, then we've also been requested, we've requested they let us know so that we know not to show up that night. At Smedley Park, I work with Mark Manfrey, who is the Delaware County Parks and Rec Director. And that again is a permit, a form that we fill out, let them know the dates that we would like to be riding there. And so just as, other requests are made, it's the same process.
And I would assume, again, in the hypothetical, if this were to come to reality, that the group, and you would expect other groups would be warm to a similar arrangement of designating times and permitting and things like that.
Right. Unfortunately, that's one more thing that Parks and Rec would have to manage, right? So I think that's the conversation to have with Tammy. But right, I would request the use the same as I do, for anything else. Yes.
Does anyone else have anything, any other questions or comments while we have Susie with us and while the topic's on the floor?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple things. First
Please.
of all, Susie, thanks so much for coming tonight. It's great to have you back here and talking about this. I think the pandemic has really spurred a lot of riders. In fact, I think there's a bike shortage that I keep hearing about, because so many people have taken up just biking in general. And it's great that folks are mountain biking more. I think it's a great sport, something I do in my free time as well. So I'm excited for us to be part of it. And also just want to recognize the Bike Rodeo. That was an amazing event that we had just here recently. And I want to say we had 30 or 40 kids participate, which this year is a lot, given the circumstances with folks still being hesitant to come out. And typically that's a very successful event for us. And I see it growing, and you can really see the enthusiasm of all the riders, especially the team riders that you had out that helped us. So thank you for them. Thank you for bringing them out and letting them help. So I think that, it's kind of a sport like skateboarding was at one point in time. It's like, okay, we're not really sure where is this going to go, but it's here to stay. I don't see it being something that's a trend or a fad or something that's going to go away. I see it being something that's growing. And I know our current recreation assistant, who unfortunately is leaving us soon, but her son is a participant in Tredifferent, and he loves it. And that's his sport, and it's not soccer, it's not baseball, it's not football. Mountain biking's his sport. And it's really grown into something so much more than I think a lot of people realize. The only thing I would suggest is if we had an idea of another location in the background, like let's at some point maybe try to vet that out, what that would be, or locations. I know that, Odorriceo is a prospective location, and by far, we want to keep that dialogue going for all the reasons that you mentioned, especially given the location and proximity to so many important places. But I would hate to get to the end of the discussions of Odorriceo and have it be something that isn't desirable, and then maybe not have any other options going in the background. So I would just ask the board, and, I guess maybe even it's more of a BOC question, is to, kind of consider some other locations that may need to have a survey or need to have more information, on, township owned, ownership, things like that. I know we have the Chew and the Young Tract, or very, obscure pieces of land that I don't think we're really sure where our boundaries even exist in those, parcels and how we get on them. Although I know we've had some success getting to the Young Tract, but not really sure of all the details. So I would just suggest to maybe, keep something going in the background as well of, options, just so it's something that, and maybe there's a need for two locations that offer, beginner, and then maybe more of beginner to intermediate. I don't know. I just want to keep that dialogue going and out there.
Susie, does it have to be a wooded area, or could it just be a more or less open field? If it has, a little bit of a slope to, give,
we could just practice on a grassy slope. We would figure out ways to make that work for a few practices a year.
Yeah.
I don't think that, you would see that use as, a mountain bike. It
Right.
certainly wouldn't fit many of the needs of other Radnor mountain
Right.
bikers.
Right.
I mean, certainly, Mary, like I'm sure you've been to Fair Hill, like it's a lot of fields. We ride through fields at Fair Hill into the wooded areas. But that's, thousands of acres
Yeah.
is the difference.
Yeah.
So
I'm just thinking of some
Yeah.
additional backup places.
we brainstorm a lot, believe me. Yes. We're constantly trying to brainstorm like what are places that mountain biking could possibly be developed. And I would say it's something that we see throughout the Southeast Pennsylvania, because this area is really growing in mountain biking and there's not a lot of space that can be used. So it's something on, not just our team mind, but many other teams in Southeast Pennsylvania as they look at their townships. Upper Dublin has just recently very successfully transformed one of their golf courses into a multi-recreational use, including mountain bike trails facility. So it was a golf course that had closed, and it was then owned by the township. And so we're thinking outside the box in many other townships as well. So we would welcome that conversation of exploring what ideas might people have. As far as our youth go, it would be great to have something, because we are a small township, it would be great to have something that's safe and accessible for them to get to. I think, right, when you look at adult mountain biking, it's a different thing.
Yes, Susie, I think moving forward from here, I think we've started to develop a little bit of a roadmap with some coordination with the residents and perhaps the meeting with Howard and some residents towards the end of this month. And I think from our board's perspective, I think we should welcome the opportunity to bring that back to our agenda and to brainstorm on these things and to see what we can do in terms of ideas, push the matter forward. I know that I don't speak for the entire board, but I know those of us had some things to say about it. I'm very much in favor of trying to work to get this to be a reality in Radnor. Obviously, we don't have a penny to spend and we don't have ultimate authority, but we do have a role here. And I would like us to try to discuss this and see if there isn't a way to address the concerns some have raised and find a place for this activity, which I think is wonderful. And I agree with Tammy, it's growing. And even those that are playing the traditional basketball, football, baseball, lacrosse sports, they're getting on their mountain bikes on the weekends too, and doing these things. So it certainly would be another great recreational opportunity to add to our portfolio, so to speak, here in Radnor. So I'd like to bring it back on the agenda, and we can keep in touch, Susie. And this is a great kickoff to revisiting this discussion. And I know I'm very appreciative of you coming forward and getting us up to speed and giving some information, which is really helpful because we're not boots on the ground on this issue, and it's helpful as we go forward trying to move through the issue.
Depending on how many people you want to talk to, I certainly have lists of people who have reached out. So, we can definitely move forward with the conversation. I'm excited to come and talk on the 27th or meet residents regarding Odorizio specifically if you want to have us. But then if we're, talking what might be other options, we can explore that as well. Just let me know.
That's great. Susan, thank you so much for being and your group being a leader on this. It's wonderful that you've gotten involved and stayed invested, and we appreciate it. And hopefully we can help move this matter forward too.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. I know we have some folks on the line. I have a suspicion what they're on the line for tonight. So I'm going to move to what is new business. And I'll take just a moment to set the stage and then perhaps allow Tammy and 8 board members who may want to say something before we open it up. The new business is Fenimore Woods, and that has been old business for us for a while, of course. And going back to at least 2016, we've had this as part of our agenda and public meetings for the last 4.5 years or so. In terms of action items, I think our board serves a few functions. One thing we can do at the request of the Board of Commissioners is look at various issues and vet them. And that's what we had done with Fenimore Woods. The board hasn't asked us to do anything with it again. It may in the future, and we can revisit that, but I don't know that we're in a position tonight to really do anything in terms of formal action moving it forward because it's not before us. With that said, another very important function I think we serve in this board is to be a forum for folks to raise comments, concerns, suggestions, or issues with our parks. And it's come to at least some of our attention. There have been some folks out there that have concerns with the plan that has been approved by the board back in 2020 with regard to Fenimore Woods and specifically with respect to trees. And I thought it was important to put this on the agenda tonight to allow our board to have comments if need be, and certainly members of our residents to have an opportunity to voice their comments as well. If the Board of Commissioners does send it back to us, well, then we would have received that input, which would be helpful going forward if that happens. Tammy, I don't know if I've spoken out of turn or outside my lines on this one, but I at least wanted to set the stage on this a little bit. I don't know if you cared to add any context before we open this up, Tammy.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely would like to. First of all, I just want to take an opportunity and thank all the Parks and Recreation Board members over the last several years for the discussions that we've had. I know you guys, put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, and there've been a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions, and it's great to have that forum. And especially about a project like this, I think it is something that was, has been well intentioned all along the way. I want to thank the commissioners also, along with you guys, because there's quite a hearty financial investment that went into this when we borrowed the money back in 2016 for park and trail improvements. So as you guys know, when I came to the board as the director back in 2010, we had a pretty long slate of capital projects that we would kick around from year to year. I know Fenimore Woods was one that was in that list for, renovations. And there were different amenities throughout the years that, obviously just got kind of kicked down the road. And that's something that we've seen, kind of happen with a lot of our parks, unfortunately. But here, there was really a lot of time and discussion that went into getting funding for this park, which really has been remarkable as something that's been hard to come by. So I want to acknowledge the residents, because I know they've taken a lot of time to participate and come out to the park and meet with folks, not only back in 2019 when we had all of the meetings leading up to our public meetings, but also the ones that are potentially here tonight and more that maybe have not even joined us. I want to recognize also the opposition that they have to the removal of the healthy trees. And I want to continue to work through this project and process as civilly as we possibly can, so that we can get to, a great spot of where, I know obviously we're not going to please everybody, but to where, we have a project that most folks can really feel good about. I just, as administrator, I just want to say that, perhaps, the process for these projects, I just want to kind of toss this out there, maybe needs to be reevaluated in some way for what the expectations are, given that we have spent a lot of time, going through this project. And I understand that there are residents that, feel as if the notification process just was not vast enough to include them. Perhaps that's something we need to take a look at. And maybe that's something that, happens at this board level or happens at the commissioner's level. I know we tried to follow a notification process that's kind of been a standard when there are ordinance changes and other notification processes on projects where, letters go out, emails go out, they try to capture, 1,000-foot radius around, said location. But just something I think, it's in the future, maybe something to take a look at. But just to kind of trace back a little bit, there was the most recent discussions on the project formally were obviously with the Shade Tree Committee back in July of 2020. And then most recently, last month, there was another discussion that happened, and the tree table and the tree information I know was kicked around a lot, and there was a lot of confusion about the tree calculations, the compensatory requirement. And, the way we kind of left that meeting was that, Steve Norsini, our township engineer, John Hosbeck, the township arborist, and I would go back and regroup, obviously with the consultants and gather more information, so that, there's some clarification, obviously, that can be put out there. And what has emerged is that I anticipate, based on some recent discussions that our township manager has had on this topic with the board, that there will be a public special meeting that will potentially take place at the end of May, on May 26th, which probably going to still be a Zoom meeting, unfortunately, but we'll see how things emerge there. But the thought is that that would be a time that the project could really be discussed a bit more in terms of not only its current state and then also the process, but also just taking a step back through the details, looking at the conditions of the trees aside from the project and as part of the project, and then try to figure out if there's a feasibility for some other type of plan that potentially is, just an in-kind plan that would replace the current amenities in their current spaces, or, maybe leaving the playground in its place, but doing something different with the pavilion, moving it somewhere else. So there's a lot of ideas, I think, that, could potentially come of that in that meeting and could be vetted out. And ultimately, it will be an opportunity to hear resident feedback, of course, because it will be a public meeting, even if it is by Zoom, obviously, and this type of a forum. But what we could expect there is then some direction on how to proceed. So I don't want to predict, obviously, that's the designated outcome that's going to happen, but it's going to definitely come back to this board. But I think there's probably a pretty safe chance at this point, just given a lot of the discussion that's happened up until, today, and, I know to come, that it's probably a good chance that it will come back to this board. But hopefully with a set of objectives that we can try and achieve them moving forward. So, again, great project, very well intentioned. And I just want to, be able to work together with everybody to be able to arrive at something most of us can all feel good about.
I agree, Tammy, with everything you certainly had to say. And I guess perhaps you put a finer point on it. I'm a little hesitant to overstep our bounds too much with too much action tonight, because quite frankly, the board has already spoken on the issue and decided it one way. They can reverse themselves and kick it to us. But I do feel, regardless, whatever the issue may be in one of our parks, I think we need to be receptive to folks having the opportunity to share their thoughts, and then we can perhaps put those to action at some point in time. And hearing their things going behind the scenes, not behind the scenes, but that may be coming down the pike, only makes me want to pause on any kind of formal action. But I was under the impression that there had been notice. We started back in September of 2016 with this. And had at least half a dozen formal meetings, and this has been on our agenda, I think, every single meeting in the last 3 or 4 years. So doesn't mean that it's not too late for folks to have their input heard, regardless. And I think it's important for us to do that. I don't know if any of our board has anything to say. I do want to invite eventually any residents that are on the line that wish to share their comments and thoughts with us. But before we do that, do any of our board members have anything they wanted to add or comment on at this stage? All right. I'm not sure that the specifics here. I don't have host control. I gather that perhaps Ian does, or.
Yeah, I think Ian, you have control, I believe, and you have a list of folks that are here for public comment. So.
That's correct. Yeah,
Yes.
we have several people on the line. I would just ask anyone who wants to make public comment to use the hand raise feature, and we'll get to you in the order received. First public comments, Paul Vernisi.
Great. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Great,
we can.
thanks.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm a resident of Radnor Township, live walking distance to Fenimore Woods, been using that park for several decades. We love the park. It's such a unique park. It's got such a beautiful, unique character, being so woodsy. So it makes me happy to hear that this might go back sort of to the drawing board, so to speak, because I do think we just need to kind of, with such a drastic, the proposed plan has such a drastic number of trees to be removed and would result in such a drastic change to the character of the park. I do think it would behoove us all to go back and reassess whether this specific proposed plan that includes the removal of 143 trees is actually what the people of Radnor Township want. I just don't know much about the history of the inception of this project. I wish I did, but I don't know exactly what the goals that we're trying to achieve, but everyone I speak to seems like the sentiment is we would really love for the park not to be changed so drastically. So yeah, a reassessment of what we're trying to accomplish and what the goals are would be greatly appreciated by myself and many of my fellow residents. And also one other point is, I think it would be great to keep the park, to not change the park too much, because to allow for township park diversity. So many township parks, they are, kind of ball fields, they're open, they don't have that woodsy character like Fenimore does. So it would be great to have just that one park in the township that, might not be a place where you could play 9 innings of baseball, but would be a place where you could go and just enjoy the shade and an extremely unique mature tree canopy that took nature, 100 years to grow. So that's all I have to say. Really just want to save the trees. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vernisi, for your comments.
Our next public comments, Jim Higgins.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining.
I'm a resident of Radnor Township over on South Devon Avenue, and I'm speaking tonight for the trees. I understand there have been a lot of public meetings about this that I was not aware of. I know public notice went out to immediate residents, but I live over on South Devon Avenue, and I was not notified, and my children and I go to that park all the time. It was actually heartbreaking to hear that anyone in the township would think that this was a good idea to take down all these healthy trees. I speak for the trees because for some reason, many public servants who are supposed to care about trees have not spoken for them during this process. And that's what's most troubling to me. It's simply unconscionable that any plan that called for the mindless destruction of over 120 healthy mature trees anywhere in our township ever made it this far. Are township decision makers truly aware of the science and immeasurable value of mature trees? I'm not speaking about dozens of dinky compensatory saplings that are disingenuously promoted by some as an adequate substitute for canopy destruction. I'm talking about the priceless and irreplaceable value of mature trees, especially oak trees in our ecosystem. If you don't already know about his work, I would encourage all public space decision makers to read the work of Doug Tallamy, an entomologist at the University of Delaware, and author of the best-selling book, Nature's Best Hope. His research finds that mature oak trees are simply irreplaceable in the food chain. Oaks support 897 different caterpillar species in the US, which are high-value food for birds. In fact, of all the food eaten by insects, birds, and other animals, 75% comes from just a few key genera, and oaks lead that list. An oak canopy and root system are vital in water infiltration, helping rain percolate instead of just running off, and purifying it in the process. Mature oak trees also naturally sequester carbon. Has anyone noticed that this plan called for massive stormwater management infrastructure for which the woods would need to be destroyed in order to install? This logic simply makes no sense. The plan simultaneously called for paving and expanding the gravel parking lots, thereby adding huge amounts of new impervious blacktop that would make the stormwater problem much, much worse. The cruel irony here is that to accomplish this, they proposed the removal of 143 of nature's greatest natural storm water sponges, mature trees, and their massive root systems. It's all so backwards, it makes you wonder who actually defined the scope of this project as it currently stands. I must ask that question, whatever was the goal here? Who were the actual complainants about the woods as they are today? What was the impetus? Where are these complainants? Why change anything there at all? Finally, if any future proposed upgrade triggers laws that would necessitate the destruction of any healthy mature trees at Fenimore, my suggestion would be to reject such a plan and to simply buy nicer porta potties and then call it a day. Just whatever's done, leave nature alone. Speak for the trees and fight for Fenimore Woods. I appreciate the time.
Next public comment is Cameron Azareno.
Hello there. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. I think that our former speaker, Jim, ought to be called The Lorax, which is quite frankly one of my favorite books growing up, a Dr. Seuss book. And the Lorax spoke for the trees, as did Jim, just so wonderfully. My name is Cameron Azareno. I live at 243 Willow Avenue. I came from Massachusetts to Pennsylvania as a college student in fall of 1989. I have been walking Fenimore Woods for 32 years. I think I would like to say that certainly what is most important to me is saving the woods, which to me entails the character of the park. Through this process over the past however many weeks, I want to say that I have been extremely grateful, and I am to this day. Tammy has been extremely responsive to me. I've had meetings with herself and Steve Norsini a handful of times. I've also attended a good handful of meetings so far that I can. So I have made my objection to the current plan clear. Because I love the park exactly how it is. But I think I also appreciate a lot of what Tammy said, and I'm grateful that there's an open-mindedness to just being willing to stop and say, okay, let's consider what we're really needing and wanting and then planning to do. I would like to speak specifically about the accessibility, because I know that that is one of the main drivers of this. If I could give my background, I have a 45-year-old brother with Down syndrome. He, at the age of 5, entered a rigorous program at the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential in Chestnut Hill, Pennsylvania. We're originally from Massachusetts. So as a 9-year-old, my parents took me down with them and my brother David to spend 2 weeks for one of his assessments. It was during that time that I was introduced as a 9-year-old to some of the most severely handicapped and disabled children, with the gamut of whether they would be injuries or natural born challenges. I spent my childhood on the sidelines at the Special Olympics. I was a nanny for a child with cerebral palsy, and my sister-in-law had the most amazing, beautiful niece of mine for 15 years, and she spent her life in a stroller and a wheelchair. So accessibility is personal to me. I just want you to know that I come from a place of compassion and consideration. I spent a fair amount of time on the phone with my sister-in-law trying to get her take on this. She went to Rosemont. Her daughter, Clara, who is not still with us today, has spent time in Fenimore Woods with her other 3 children who are not disabled. I think what I gathered from my conversation with my sister-in-law, and what I know personally, because I've raised my 3 children in that park, we are nature lovers. We love trees, we love plants, we love grasses, insects, birds, turtles, everything that you can find in that park. And my children most certainly have their appreciation of nature today because of Fenimore Woods, exactly as it is today. We as a group who are really trying to again, be considerate of the needs, feel that the sensory and educational value of a natural wooded park with an active ecosystem and habitats of native birds and animals is irreplaceable. And though I do believe that the intentions were good, if you look at what the current plans are, you eradicate everything of what I just spoke of. You eradicate the natural wooded park, you take away the active ecosystem, and you destroy the habitats of the native birds and animals that live there. I think another point that I'd like to make, what is so incredibly important, is the shade. And I do have to agree with Jim, who just spoke, that it's a little bit shocking to think that this project actually went to the extent that it did. But again, I appreciate Tammy recognizing that quite potentially the process of informing residents and getting people involved needs to be assessed, and I wholeheartedly agree. I live a quarter mile away from the park. I'm in that park. I drive by it. I work at Eastern. I drive by that park every day of my.
Benny, get your hips open.
I want to say, in terms of the accessibility, we as a group have met there a handful of times. And I do believe that it's possible to, keeping the footprint of the park as it is, really greatly improve the accessibility to the different components of the park. Because again, I do think accessibility is important. Final thing that I would like to say is, and it sounds like we're in a good place. From what I've learned, and if I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me, but it sounds like the money is there and is ready. It's not tied up in a grant, or there's no time constraint. So if we could just not rush and consider that the many, many people that we have worked to try to educate about this project, A, did not know about it, and B, the majority of the people we speak to don't approve of the destruction of such unbelievable healthy canopy trees in a natural wooded park. So that's all I'd have to say. And again, I appreciate you all and the work that you do.
Thank you very much, Ms. Azareno, for your comments and insight. Before we move to the next person, Tammy, since it's a factual question that probably would advance the dialogue, just so we're at least get some perspective on that money question that Ms. Azareno raised. Can you give us just a thumbnail sketch of what the status of that is and what's tied to what, just so we all know?
Sure. So right now, there's only one grant that had been received for the project, and it's not tied to anything. It doesn't require a match. It doesn't require anything other than I think the component in which it was received was the playground replacement. So, you know, it is likely that if the project was to change and if the playground wasn't to get replaced, that maybe a different component of the project itself could be swapped in and out for that dollar value, which in the grand scheme of the project is actually a much smaller dollar value at $50,000. So, you know, that one is one where, you know, it's, you know, obviously we don't want to lose the money for it, but, you know, maybe there's another viable project or something out there that could go to. So the balance of the funding comes from the bond. And that is, it is on a timeline to which it does need to be spent in a certain amount of time. However, I know that, you know, we've actually, I think we've been through the grace period, I think, of what's there, but since we have been able to demonstrate that we are working towards this project, and we also are not carrying the money in a coffer that's allowing it to accrue an interest at a certain rate, and you know that's a mix of things given where it's allocated and what the current interest rates are. I don't believe that jeopardizes us in any way eminently. Obviously, I would have to defer to our finance director, Bob Tate, to really opine on that in much deeper degree. But I think a couple of things we show with this project is, one, it's underway. Two, we already have a lot of commitment made to it. We've already engaged consultants and we've made substantial amount of headway with it. So, I feel that we're still in good standing, but don't obviously quote me on that. And that would be something that we would discuss in a little bit more detail on the 26th, where we have that actual dialogue. And Bob Tate will be there at the meeting and obviously prepared to talk about that from a more technical and financial state.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Tammy. I appreciate that. And I didn't mean to sidetrack our public discussion, but I thought it was a good question to at least try to get something of a semblance of direction or an answer on. Ian, would you be kind enough to call the next person on, please?
Yes, next public comment, Christina Peters.
Good evening.
Hi, it's Christina. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for letting me join you. My neighbors have all stated the value that we place on those trees. I'd like to echo that, but I don't think I need to repeat it. I I do want to say that Ms. Cohen has hit the nail on the head when she says we need to look at outreach. Are we doing what, is what we're doing matching up to the goals we want to achieve in our township as a whole? It seems to me that if you ask users of built infrastructure, do you want bigger, better, newer infrastructure with more parking? They're going to say, yeah, I do. If you then tell them, well, we're going to have to take down all these trees to give you that, their answer might change. I think in many cases it would. If you look more broadly to people who value and benefit from the park, like those of our neighbors who've already spoken, like myself, I live less than a mile away, but I'm not an immediate neighbor. And because Fenimore Woods in particular has the canopy and has that pond, it's not a generic neighborhood park, right? I mean, you might go there even though you have a playground closer to you because you like the shade, or your kids like to walk around the pond and look at the ducks, or what have you. But it's special, and there's just not, I think, a limitation to the residents who think it's special in that group that was tagged for direct outreach. Moreover, even for those of us who were looking at the plan and who were aware of the project and who are in sympathy with many of the aims of the project, it just really wasn't clear what that tree impact was going to be. It was in a report to the Shade Tree Commission, but you really had to kind of get into the weeds to say, oh, there's not going to be any shade there for another 20, 30, 40 years. Right? I mean, that just wasn't the trade-off that we're asking people to make, just wasn't clear. Not to me, and I looked. So I don't think that the Shade Tree Commission was totally clear when it made its recommendation either, because I think they seem to have proceeded on the assumption that the plan corresponded to the requirements of compensatory planting under the ordinance, and that just based on Shade Tree's last meeting just doesn't seem to have been the case. Which then I wonder, is the approval of it then really valid if that necessary step was based on an error? So I'm glad we're taking the step back. I'm glad we're taking another look at it. As we go forward, I'd like to suggest that uses that are not consistent with that forested canopy natural feel be de-emphasized. That is to say, I know people like to rent that pavilion, but if you ask me how many trees to take down for that, I would say 0. Accessibility is another thing, and I know that we often think of having to grade to create accessibility, but we have in our own township a really beautiful example of a ramp at Chanticleer that was built instead of graded, and it is an ornament and a delight. So I would ask you, as we think about accessibility, which I think we should create to the extent that we can, even if we don't have to, because we're not triggering the legal requirements. I'd ask that we think about, how do we create access to a magical place, and not, well, I guess we have to destroy magic to create an accessible place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peters, for your comments. I think we still have at least one more person. I see a hand raised on. Ian, would you welcome them on, please?
Yes, that's Sarah S.
Yes, hi, how are you?
I'm well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been a great meeting and I'm really glad I joined. My name is Sarah Sass and I grew up in Wayne. I'm speaking not only for myself, but for my parents who live at Berwind Road and have been living there for 27 years. I initially wanted to join this meeting to talk about the Willows, which I'm sure you all know has had a lot of property development encroached upon those beautiful woods. And I've had to watch those woods become incredibly developed and become an ad hoc dog park. And so I was surprised to hear about the proposed development to Fenimore Woods. And I just want to emphasize the importance of wooded areas in areas such as Radnor Township. I mean, they're incredible places for people to bond for generations. And unfortunately, when areas are made more accessible and are opened up, people tend to treat them like their own backyard, especially when there isn't signage. People will bring their dogs and they won't clean up after their dogs. And as Tammy knows, my mom was knocked over by a dog at the Willows a few weeks ago, and it was just a very difficult situation. And so I really want to emphasize that more development doesn't necessarily mean positivity. And so thank you, Tammy, for your clarification of the rationale behind this project at Fenimore Woods. There are so many ways that resources can be spent in a positive environmental way. Preventing erosion around that pond is incredibly important. And many of the waterways in Radnor's parks are eroded, including the stream through the Willows. There's also the capability for the township to erect signs explaining the tree species and how old they are, and really make it a welcoming space for people so that not only the tree lovers on the meeting today, but everyone really becomes a tree lover. And then also removing invasive species is something where if you're looking to do something for these parks, removing invasive species can happen. So I totally understand that when a bond comes up, you want to spend it, but there are many environmentally friendly ways to spend it. And so that's all I want to say. Just keep Radnor green. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sass. And you mentioned that you joined for the Willows discussion. I'm not sure how much detail we're going to get on that tonight, but I know this board has been discussing for some time issues surrounding dogs and the Willows and our parks in general. And I think once we get to a public, the ability to have a public forum, we plan on inviting folks in for a much more extensive discussion on that. So stay tuned. Because all the input we can get from any residents is important on that issue as well. And I certainly thank you for your comments on the Fenimore Woods issue.
Thank you.
And we have Christina Peters for public comment.
Sure.
Just following up on the invasive species question, we've got trees being pulled down by invasive vines in Harford Park. And elsewhere in the township. There's also very significant Japanese knotweed infestation along the Radnor Trail. That's a tremendously destructive plant that can travel, its roots travel underground, and it can destroy foundations and asphalt. So there's and I can walk you around and show you lots of places where invasives really need to be combated if we're looking for ways to spend money in a positive way.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. And I know this has been an ongoing discussion on this board as well on the invasive species and trying to find a way to make the dollars in the township and the resources available, because we on this board have seen this over the last couple of years as an important issue that we'd love to be able to address as well. All right. I think we have Ms. Azareno. I see a hand up again. Ian, if you could invite her back, please.
Thank you again, and I really appreciate those comments about invasive species, because I think what led me to this, the knowing of my own independent research, was an initial meeting I had with Tammy and Steve and Marcus von Herstenberg from Eastern in regard to the pond. So I think those comments about invasive species are actually applicable to the pond area of Fenimore. And that's, for me from the get-go, I've tried to have a broad view, knowing that it is far more complicated because we're dealing with waterways. And I understand that. I did really quick want to say this, though, that this was something my sister-in-law had shared. And I know from my personal experience in caring and loving for my niece, Clara, as the park currently is planned, Clara would spend very little time in that park because of the lack of shade. And I mentioned shade, but I don't know that I really drew that connection that for her, it was critically important that she would have a place to go where she was heavily shaded. And I drive around Radnor, and I know there's a lot going on with tree removal, and there's a lot of talk of tree plantings. And I look at the little tiny spots on the ground that a 2.5-inch sapling creates, and it doesn't even come close in comparison to the amazing shade that's at Fenimore. So I just wanted to make that point, that I think, being careful not to use ADA as a reason to maybe broaden a park project far greater than it needs to be, I think is all I want. And I think that sensitivity is there, but I think, now we're actually honing in on maybe how to do it without removing the trees. Thank you. Thank you
Very much as well. I think I don't see any additional public comment requesters. I don't know if any of our board members have anything to add to our Fenimore Woods discussion from tonight. I would suggest that the one thing we can do is there are at least 2 BOC members that are adjunct members of this committee. We'll make sure that the sentiments shared here tonight are shared with those folks as well, so they can be informed in any decisions they might make going forward. But does anyone on our board have anything else to add here on this topic?
Bill, it's Chris. I just to be clear, is there definitely going to be a township meeting, a special meeting about Fenimore Woods? And so we'll wait for that meeting to happen and get any possible direction from the Board of Commissioners at that point.
To answer the second part of that, yes, we will wait direction. If desired for us to revisit this, we're happy to do that, and we'll do that. At this point, I don't know that we're empowered, or that's really our place to say. As for the meeting, I defer to Tammy. I believe that's something that is maybe not been formalized, but is perhaps in the works.
Yeah, my understanding is that is in the works. So once I have, obviously definitive information, date solidified, time, and all of that, not only will that be distributed to all of you, but it'll be distributed out publicly as well. So, I mean, the date could change. I don't want to say is a definite, but that's what has been discussed right now. So as soon as there's more information, that'll be circulated.
Thanks, Tammy. One other quick question is, can I assume that the consultant has been asked to stop putting any more hours in, so we're not spending any more money on this project until we have a clearer picture as to what might happen?
The consultant has, we have stopped, we put a pause on the project. The only thing that we will be asking the consultant to do in concert with the arborist is to put together a plan for the commissioners so that they can see definitively what the tree removals entailed, not only the tree removals that are imminent. So of those 143, 145 trees that were going to come down, we talked about the 26 that were under disease and risk and what have you. So they will refine that plan. That way that is 100% accurate for the commissioners meeting.
Great.
Tammy, I have a question. I'm sorry. Tammy, this gets into how refined. I'm wondering if, in addition, this will be helpful to know what the 26 arguably diseased trees or dangerous trees are, whether they will go so far as to identify the specific trees to be removed, because it's not just a question of how many trees are removed, it's what kind of trees are removed. So, obviously we're going to be very concerned about some of those mature white oaks that are there for reasons that people have already mentioned. If they are going to be removed, that's going to be more, troubling. If we're talking about, a bunch of Norway maples or something, people are going to be less concerned about that. So it would be helpful to know specifically which trees. I hope that's not asking for too much detail, but for me, I would really like to know, is this tree going to be a goner? Is this tree going to be gone?
And that will definitely be part of that. Not only that, but showing the exact location of those. So, 70 to 80% of those trees are right in and around the pavilion area. So that'll be critical to show on that plan, just so folks have an understanding that even if we were to choose to do nothing, and walk away from this project, there still will be a contract out for those 26 or whatever the variable is that have been, added
Right.
or what have you, in the last year or 2 years since the plan was done, in terms of what would be removed.
Okay, great.
So
That's
that.
great.
All right. Well, thanks to our board. Thank you very much to members of our residents that have joined us tonight for their input. It's very important. I know that all of us over this 4.5-year time frame, Tammy, all the township folks and the vendors have been using this board, as well as I'm sure Shade Tree, are trying to get to a point where we can have a park that as many people as possible are proud of and can use in the ways that the residents desire. And this input is valuable in helping us, especially if it does come back to us again. We can consider that input as well as we move forward. So thanks to everybody for their input tonight. I'm going to skip back up to the top of our agenda, Tammy, and give you the floor for the recreation update. And we can meld that, if you want to meld that into project updates, we can meld that into one agenda item for tonight.
We can, I'll try to be brief with just the recreation update. We still continue to see great trends in participation. You guys have all the numbers and everything in the director's report, and you can look that over. A lot of great programs up and running right now, and a lot of really great things on the horizon to come this summer. We have a new event that we're going to be doing at Azareno Park, which is going to be a music event, like with a concert and 3 artists that'll be performing, as well as a movie. So we're really excited about that, and to be able to showcase an event at Azareno it's just great timing and just a great opportunity and something new for us that we haven't done before. We have a partnership going with the Radnor Township Civic Association to deliver the event. So we anticipate that, I liked hearing that they're, able to have some in-person engagement at the facility, because then that just helps us with an opportunity perhaps to open their doors the day of the event so that they can have sort of a mini open house per se, something that we had talked about just to raise awareness for the RTCA. So we're excited about that. And obviously the Wiffle Ball Classic coming back at the end of July. Can't wait to have that again. Great fundraiser for Delaware County Special Olympics, and working with our residents, and of course partnering with our Little League to have such a great event at Anki Park. And then we have the Great American Backyard Camp Out coming at the end of June, which is a traditional event that we do with our Radnor Scouts. So we're really excited to be getting back to some normalcy. We recognize that the health and safety guidelines are evolving, so we haven't been quick to change any parameters or policies or anything like that as we head into the summer camp system or summer camp season. So we'll be evaluating those. I think after Memorial Day, there's some more expected changes. So we don't want to really make any, knee-jerk decisions or new policies right now that could obviously change again in June. So we're monitoring that. We're also, we're saying goodbye to Lizette Subak, who is our recreation assistant, who has served us for the last few years. And she has been a remarkable employee. To say that she's anything short of amazing is really, it's an understatement. For what she has brought, not only to the role administratively, but just her special skills with health and wellness and overall just creativity to support programming. So it will be a sad day saying goodbye to her at the end of the month. So I've transitioned now to full-time hiring HR coordinator to try and procure someone that can at least in some way fill part of her shoes, especially as we're knee deep in spring and lots of fun summer things going on. So that's a recreation update, really, in sum. Is in terms of parks, the Hartford Trail, it has been completed and has opened. I haven't had a chance to walk it yet, but I understand that it's finalized. The trees have been planted. I think there's some fencing on a near a resident's property that still has to go in, so that still remains. But if you get a chance, take a stroll over there and check it out. We talked about our sliding boards at Azareno and Beau Connor. Those have arrived, and we're just waiting on a date from the contractor to get them installed. The tap trail, I know progress is still being made there, and that's moving along. And I think that aside from Fenimore, really gearing up for a big meeting with the commissioners and a turning point potentially for the project. I think that really kind of sums up the projects at this point, as far as that. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
First, thank you, Tammy. The only question I have is, I know we had at some point, I don't know if this is a larger discussion, but on our agenda was to at least discuss the Odoricio basketball court refinish. I don't know if that's something that we can address tonight, or you want to update us on, or.
We can. I had that on as an individual line item, so that's why I didn't really go into
Okay.
detail with
Well,
it as part of my update. But I am prepared to talk about that tonight, and I have actually a version of the plans that I can show to you.
Okay.
When you're ready.
When we table that for a moment at least, and see if anyone else on the board has any questions for you on your rec and project report. Okay. All right. Well, then let's move then formally on the agenda to the update on the Odoricio and I guess also Cowan basketball basketball court renovations, please.
Okay. I am going to share my screen. I think, Ian, I can do that. So I am going to try and give that a whirl. And I'm not sure why. There we go. Okay, so I assume you guys can all see this?
Yes.
But not the details of it, of course, because it's so super tiny. As a plan on a screen over Zoom is going to look, unfortunately. It would be a little bit better if we were in person, obviously. So what you're looking at right here is really the design drawing for Cowan Park. So what you see with a blue line that goes around, I don't know if you're able to see my arrow, but where you see the blue line, that is actually the existing court. So as you can see, really, there's kind of, there's some slight changes to come. So now there's going to be an addition of a 6-foot boundary that's going to go around the entire, well, there's going to be a 6-foot boundary that's going to come at the back of the court. So at the baseline, we'll call it, facing what would be the playground over in this direction. And then obviously on the opposite baseline, to be able to achieve that safety distance that's really needed that doesn't exist now. So if you throw up a layup, this point, right now, the way it's designed, really technically, if you came down the wrong way, you easily could step out of bounds. Or if you went to grab a ball somewhere near that area, you could step out of bounds, and there's no safety area that is actually constructed. The same thing goes on the sidelines, which would be receiving at this point a 3-foot boundary line, so that there's a safety line, so that if you were playing a game and made a pass and you stepped outside of the baseline, you still have at least an asphalt area that you're stepping on that gives you that safety distance. So there is a bit of a change to the size of the court, and really the delta of that, if you were looking at the sideline edge, really here from the creek, ends up only being about a 2-foot distance, 2-foot difference, given the way the court would be lined out. If you were looking at the baseline here, it ends up being actually about 5.7 feet. If you look at it over here, it's about a 3-foot distance. You don't really have a lot of expansion in that direction, obviously, because you go into the hillside, and keep in mind that's being shifted. And then down here on the opposite end, and the opposite baseline, you have a 6-foot 6-foot distance there. And I can zoom into all of these if you want to look at them, look at the distancing a little bit more closely. But this should give you a little bit more of a perspective. I don't know if that's a little bit better.
Tammy, if I can interrupt just for a moment, on the baselines, you mentioned a barrier. Is that just additional blacktop paving?
It is. It's asphalt. So it's really considered, as they have it labeled on here, an unobstructed, safety area. So it won't actually be, painted just like the court here, although we'll end up probably making it green so that it looks, it's consistent and it's not like just black asphalt that's there. But the drawing is obviously for the purpose of the court and the outline. So that that is just to show you the difference that you're going to see in the size of the court and what it looks like now and how it's growing.
And I would assume that runoff and impervious and all that has been addressed in some fashion due to the change.
Yes, and there wasn't a number that was hit for the stormwater requirement. So I believe that's 500 square foot. I think this was just under that at like 467. The number is probably on here. I think it was a total of 467 square feet difference.
Okay. I'm sorry, if I sidetracked you, I apologize. I figured while we had the plans and we were pointing at certain things, I figured I'd ask those questions.
No, that's okay. Now the court is being addressed. It's going to be engineered to address any water retention. I think right now there's some puddling that takes place in some areas. So, it will have the 2% sloping that enables there to be water runoff to tip towards the creek, which is important, not only just for the playing surface, but, obviously keeps the water going in the direction that it needs to be going in. And I mean, I don't have any pictures, unfortunately, right now to show you, but for anybody who's been over to the courts recently, they are in really bad condition. So in addition to this, the equipment will all be replaced too. So it's not just the court and the surfacing, but the actual equipment with the backboards and the standards and all of that will all be upgraded and will be a similar format of what you've seen over at Beauconnor Park and Clemacrone Park.
Great.
So does anybody have any specific questions or concerns?
Yeah, I don't have any other than those that I raised. It'll be nice to get that. It's been a long time coming for that project.
Absolutely. So if you're ready, we'll switch gears to Odoriceo because that one's a little bit more complicated. Okay, so try to give you perspective here. So this is the parking lot over here. This would be the woods over here. And this is the hillside. So you can see the contours on the plan that basically show the hillside. So we've got a lot of differences here. And so first of all, we have learned and we've observed, not only just from, seeing and being at the court, but talking with individuals who use the court and folks from the neighborhood that, we do have a safety issue right now because we have the court that basically it tips right onto the parking lot. There's a little bit of a downgrade and a slope that comes off the court. It's actually kind of unsafe because it's not an even surface. And you literally go right into the parking lot. There's no boundary that separates the basketball court from the parking lot at this point. And we've heard a lot about, concerns for the basketball bouncing into the parking lot. People run out, they grab it, and obviously there's issues there and can be potential situations that would happen with vehicles because there's a lot of folks that do come in and out of the park and park up in this area. So that was a concern that we initially wanted to address that really kind of set the stage for the rest of the court layout. So the way this would be reconstructed over here is where you see this line with these dots, that would be a post and rail fence. So very similar to the fence that you would see around Enki Playground. So a post and rail fence with the mesh wiring inside, Clemacrone Playground, same type of fencing. So the thought process behind that is that it gives you a chance to create that separation. So if a ball's, rolling off the court, it's going to hit the fence. It's not going to go right into the parking lot. So it's going to slow it down. Obviously, if it bounces high enough, it would go over it. Because I want to say it would only be, I think they're only a 3-foot fence or 4-foot fence. So they're not that tall, but they do the job. We've seen them work at Clemacrone around the rain gardens and what have you, and definitely help a lot. And then where you see the shaded area, this actually would be 3 foot of sod. So essentially that's going to be grass. So again, turns around and now creates, more of a boundary, within that particular area. And then, this blue line, again, very similar to the Cowan plan, is the existing basketball court. So you could see we're also capturing another distance in here from the baseline over, that's giving us that 6-foot boundary in safety area, which is, I didn't say it when we were talking about Cowan, but that's a safety standard in the industry. 6 foot off of a baseline, 3 foot off of a sideline, which, as we go on and continue to look at the court, on the sidelines, we're also aiming to achieve the same thing so that we have a 3-foot safety line, safety boundary on each side of the court. Again, safety and just overall, general perspective here, we have a hillside and a slope. So that gives an opportunity where now you'll have an option to step out of bounds and you have somewhere to go. Right now, if you step out of bounds, you're at depending on the place, you're at a 2-foot drop off, maybe even 3 in some areas. And, it's also being undercut. So some of this will be graded out, of course, to kind of make that happen. So where the biggest change is going to happen is obviously on this side. So here you see on the blue line, obviously that's the end of the court, the edge of the court right now. But in order to make the court work, again, taking into consideration of, what we're trying to achieve on the opposite side near the parking lot, we have a 15.9 foot difference from where the existing baseline is, the existing edge line, I should say, is, and then where the new existing edge line will be, in order to be able to capture the court after we slide it over, essentially. And then again, giving it that 6-foot base, 6-foot boundary line and safety area. And so what happens is we do end up losing trees over here. I believe we're going to lose a total of 6 trees. And then 9 of them are going to be replaced. So where you see these trees here, these are just dropped down right now. These are not going to be where these are planted. We still have some work to do to work with John Hosbeck, talk about, specific trees we will want to replant, and probably engage other members of the shade tree too, because they'll be shown this plan as well, potentially next week. I think they meet on the 19th. So they'll have a chance to look at this and obviously have some discussion, not only about the tree removals, but the tree replacements and, what those might look like and where those actually might go, because that's an important part of the project. So right now there's a lot of boulders that sit over in this area. Right. We'll have to discuss relocation of those potentially, or, they can still go back here. They obviously would just have to be slid further back once the trees are removed. And I know that, there have been some interest in putting them in some other locations potentially around the court, which we would want to work out with some of the residents. I know we've had discussion with them where they may like to see those. I know, Howard, we talked a couple different times about, the desires about the boulders and where they could be allocated for seating and what have you. But we did take into consideration new seating. So over here, we have a new proposed 6-foot bench. So it would be, concrete, anchored in the concrete, and something where, folks could sit. There's another one that would be on this side as well. So something very similar to what you see over at Clemacrone. And then the bleachers, we're proposing to we got to take a look at the existing bleachers. They're actually in pretty good shape, but if they seem to, require replacement, we will add that in certainly. So in a nutshell, which is a very big difference to the court in terms of shifting it, but otherwise it will be very difficult to make it work in its existing space without expanding it and giving it the safety features that it needs, unless the alternative was to move it entirely to a different location. Because it wouldn't be feasible to turn it, turn it around, and you just have too vast of a slope there. It just wouldn't work without significant grading, to make that happen.
Tammy, a quick question, then I'll invite others. The green that we see on this, is that what would actually be the playing surface as opposed to the safety area?
It is, that would be the playing surface. So where you see the safety area and the safety boundary, the only thing that I was suggesting earlier is that, you know, we may want to paint that green just so that it all blends. That's something that we need to look a little bit more closely at. I'm pretty sure over at Macron it is. I believe the entire
It
surface.
is.
I
It
don't
is.
think it runs off into like a black, you know, just blacktop. So, I mean, that's more of an aesthetic, you know, feature that, you know, we can either decide to do or not to do, but probably would look better if we did it just to keep the consistency.
Thanks. Before I ask any other questions, does anybody else have any questions or comments on the Odorizio basketball court?
The quick question. The at center court there, where you have the proposed bleachers, is that going to be into the ground, or is that going to be one of those movable things that, like the aluminum one that's up there now? Because there are times when they move that thing around and they flip it up, and next thing you know, you see a piece of board and the skateboarders are on it.
Yeah, so I mean that would definitely be anchored.
Okay.
You know, we would definitely want to anchor that into a concrete setting and give it a footer to stabilize it. At least that's my opinion. You know, moving forward, I think that is the right thing to do. Because it does become a skateboarding obstacle.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry if I missed this, but what's the timing on this?
I mean, the timing is just pending approvals, review by you guys, by the Shade Tree Committee. And then if there are plan refinements that have to happen from there, we would get those together and then get ready to take it to bid. A lot of the heavy lifting has been done in terms of putting the whole plan together. Obviously, this sheet sits within a packet of like 10 sheets, you know, that are there that would be put within the bid package. And obviously, if there are alterations and things like that that are needed, you know, there would have to be time for revisions. So I don't want to say that it's on a specific schedule because, as you know, anything that I would say schedule-wise isn't really valid because we do tend to, you know, want to refine it, you know, review it and get it exactly how we want. So only thing I could say is when it's ready, we'll be ready to take it to bid. And when we have those approvals, basically.
Hey, Bill.
Yes.
Just one thought is, I mean, it was really helpful when we did that walk over, you know, up to the Willows with Mary, et cetera, last month. And when we get a little bit further along on this and over Cal, I just feel like it'd be great if there's some way that we could have, you know, a couple meetings a year where we travel to a couple of these locations where there's things so that we're, I mean, you know, I can go over there individually, you can go over there individually, but as a group, you know, 10 heads are better than one. You know, we may ask questions that might generate another idea from somebody else, et cetera. It's helpful to see these things in person, I think. So I don't know if that's a possibility later in the spring or in the summer, in the fall. I don't know how long all this is going to take, but it'd be great to try and do something where we could visit a couple of these as a group, as part of a meeting or something like that.
I think it's a great idea, and I think
That's a great idea.
I really do. And I don't know what, in terms of our role and formalities and things like that, I don't want to get any kind of sunshine law problems with that, but I don't know that there's anything wrong with a bunch of us outside the context of a meeting to have a field trip to essentially see what's going on at the site. And I think it's a great idea. And with regard to this park in particular, and perhaps even Callan, I think it would be a nice idea, especially given the issues with moving the court and impact on trees and things of that nature. It'd be nice to see what we're actually talking about in terms of specific trees. And
yeah, I mean, even if it's, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning on the way to work, or, you know, 5:30 on the way home, you know, something like that. If it's outside the regular meeting, and whoever can make it kind of thing. But if we can get, you know, half our members out there to take a look at it, then it's to me, it really helps to visualize it and see with other people and get the feel for what their thoughts are, et cetera. So just an
Yeah,
idea.
and if we can do it during the, late spring, summer, early fall, while, the days are long and there's plenty of time in the evening, after work or whatever, that would be great.
Well, why don't we I'll target sending out something in the next, between now and our next meeting, just to see if we can get enough folks together before vacation season hits. And I think that would meet the criteria you suggest, Mary, and I think it's a wise one. Yeah, pretty much anything that's going to bloom or develop leaves is done so already, and we can take a look at that as well.
Yeah, I think the walkthrough we had at Skunk Hollow there, I think that was great. And, I slept good for the next 2 nights. So thank you, Mary.
You had an excellent tour guide.
Before we move on this, Tammy, just a question, and it could be my eyes after a day of staring at computer screens or getting a little distorted here, but it appears to me as though the court itself may be bigger than the existing. Is that a fair interpretation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can get you those exact dimensions. I'd have to really take a closer look on here with my eyes as well. But yes, it would be slightly larger.
And I guess just one thought or discussion point perhaps is does the size increase put us in a position where the trees need to be compromised, as opposed to if we kept the same size and slid it down to address the safety issues at the other end, they may be preserved. I don't expect you to have an answer to that necessarily.
Well, we did talk about that. I think either way, we end up in a tough situation with the trees, just given the proximity to them. But we can certainly evaluate that a little bit more closely for definitive, definitive answer.
And from a procedural standpoint, will this see shade tree before we're asked to put our 2 cents in, or is it going to go in the reverse order? Because I have some desire to perhaps have at least, and maybe it comes in the form of Claire from Shade Tree being on our board, at least some input as to what we expect those folks to say or have concerns about, and whether they can be addressed or not.
I think it was going to go to the Shade Tree potentially next week.
Okay.
But I don't see any reason why that couldn't be delayed till June if needed. Again, it's not on any particular schedule. The borrowing that was done for this project in Cowan was under a separate bond that was issued in 2018 or 17, I believe. My years are starting to run together. It might even have been 19, but it was part of stormwater sewer projects. And this ended up being, the one park project or projects, if you will, that ended up in that batch. So we're not on any type of a fast track.
Tammy, one last question. Where those benches are, and with the incline coming down when it rains, I guess things are in place where would it be on such an angle where it would run onto the court? I think we talked about this before.
Yeah, no. Well, part of the reason why the court gets slippery is because of the trees that hold the water and then drop the water down on the court. So
Right.
that's why the mold builds up on the court, and then we have to pressure wash it. I think that one day we were out there, that court was as slippery as an ice skating rink.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't because of any type of runoff coming from the hillside.
Okay. All right.
So Tammy, are you looking for something in the way of a recommendation from us at this time, or how do you want us to, not how do you want us to proceed in terms of a decision, but procedurally, how do you want us to proceed?
Well, I think given the fact that you have a desire to actually go out there and look at the courts, I don't feel it would be proper to ask you for a decision on it tonight.
Okay.
And we don't have a quorum anyways.
Yeah, and that wasn't intended to be on here as a recommendation.
Okay, just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then let's try to see if we can't find a way to put a critical mass of us together to at least walk the site between now and our next meeting, and perhaps some of the other issues after consult with John Hoshback, that those things may be a little clearer moving forward.
Okay, that sounds good. We can definitely do that.
Tammy, did you have anything else on Odoricio or Cowan basketball?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Anybody else with anything on Cowan or Odoricio before we move on? I had on the agenda our continuing dog discussion. It's my thinking with a smaller group and perhaps the prospects of having in-person input that maybe we can just table that for tonight. I don't know if anybody has a strong opinion on that, but that was my thinking.
I think that's a really great idea, given our numbers are reduced and it's, probably deserves a pretty robust discussion.
Yeah, and I've done it. I promised I was going to send some type of, I think I called it a skeleton last time of options and menus to try to at least give us some type of structure to our discussions eventually with a larger audience. I have some things scribbled down here on paper. I will actually put that in some type of an email to folks just to at least start brainstorming about options and how we want to frame the issue. I think the only update I guess I would provide, a number of us met out there. I think it was very helpful for us. And thank you, Mary, for leading us and all the guidance and the sort of brainstorming that Chris discussed with regard to Odoricio, we were able to have out there. And it's my understanding from talking to Tammy, I believe that at least one of the issues we discussed was sort of the waste stations or bags. I think there has been one put at the Sawmill end of the trail. Am I mistaken on that? I've not been over there in the last week or two.
Yes, there's one that was added at the entrance near Sawmill. So if you go across the pedestrian path and over into really Skunk Hollow, there was one added there. There was also another one that was added at on a sign at the Willows.
At the Willows.
As well. And then there was one more, but for some reason.
Okay.
It's escaping me right now.
Oh, could be the hour.
Could be that it's 8:30.
Exactly. Well, that's great to hear, Tammy, because that was one of the things that I think was pretty much near unanimous sentiment that developed as we were walking there, at least making, I think we focused on sort of a restraint or not component, and we focused on a waste component. And that certainly was one of the first things on the list that we thought might be a good idea from the waste component that we've been kicking around here. So that's great to hear.
Tammy, are we going to be adding a trash can type thing? I saw the doggy bag thing. I mean, it looks great. I mean, I hate signs, but it looks great. I mean, it will be effective, I hope. But we're going to add trash cans as well?
We are, but the trash cans for those U-channel poles have not been received yet. So we're waiting on
no, but that's okay.
So the other location was Sawmill, but it was just a sign at Sawmill. I had a conversation with Commissioner Borowski about doing the doggy bag as well as the trash can there. And we kind of just both sort of left it that maybe the sign is the best way, just to not encourage more dogs in Sawmill. Because right now there hasn't really seemed to be a problem with dogs in Sawmill proper. It's more, once you cross over and you head into the Skunk Hollow trails, as well as, on into the Willows where the issues are. So, and I know the other suggestion, Mary, I think you had about a location was near the doggy hangout in the pool, like where the creek is. So, that's another one where, I think we maybe just want to evaluate it, are the entrances good enough? Or is that just the other part of that is if we put a trash can there, that's another area we've got to get Public Works to collect.
And that's pretty remote. Yeah, the other one too, Tammy, was by the wooden bridge over Darby, where, which connects the north side of Skunk Hollow to the south side of Skunk Hollow. And that area, that sort of triangular area now that's sort of become kind of denuded, has become sort of a de facto dog park. That would also be.
Yeah, I mean, a sign, but I don't know that we would again want to put a dog bag, station and a trash can there.
As long as there's, I mean, it's not that far from the Skunk Hollow / Sawmill entrance. So, but maybe a sign is adequate there.
Yeah.
Whatever, but it's a big dog hangout area. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll make a note about a sign there.
All right. Even though I said I was tabling the agenda, we did. No, I wasn't admonishing you for that. I was the one who started it. While we're on, anybody else have anything to add on our dogs and our journey through Skunk Hollow? Okay, I think we've actually hit on just, I think every item that was on the agenda in some form or another. Does anybody else have anything else they want to raise tonight before we move towards adjourning? All right. We have another regular meeting, same time, same place next month, as Tammy alluded to. Perhaps we will be doing this in person, which will be great to see everybody face to face again. Thanks everybody tonight for all your patience and sounds like we have some more work coming our way potentially with Fenimore Woods. So we'll have some more discussions, I suppose. Anyone else have anything else they want to add or discuss? All right, I guess at this point we'll honor the formality. If someone wants to make a motion for
I
adjournment.
move, we adjourn.
All right, and I heard a second in there too.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned, and
Yay.
we'll see you around soon. Take
See you
care.
soon.
Thank